Southfield. Welcome to the Southfield Roundtable, where we speak about issues that are not exactly wonderful to us, but we can speak about difficult things in a warm, welcoming, and non-judgmental atmosphere. And to help us through this issue of today are friends of mine, and I'm so pleased to have them here at this table. Barbara Talley, longtime resident of Southfield, a founder of the Martin Luther King Task Force here in Southfield some 31 years ago, 31 years ago, and also the first African American council person. Amazing. Then we have Rob Tillis, who is Willis, what did I do to you? Rob Jones, no, Rob Willis, who of course is a longtime activist, having started here with the NAACP, a lawyer in the city, and interested in all things Southfield, I know that. Absolutely. And then we have Roy Bell, a longtime activist in our city. He too was on city council, and he's a very busy man. He has been to probably every single committee, commission, board in this city, which is astounding. It's astounding. So I welcome you all. I welcome you all to the table. So before we begin on our little journey into this subject, to me that is not a happy one, but we're going to talk about it anyway. I want to ask each of you, what happened to you in your life that clicked and said, I got to do something about it, and you became an activist? Barbara.
Well, I can tell you the very year it was, and that was 1969, when my husband and I were denied a house because we were blacks, and it was the door was slammed in our face, and that was when I knew that I had to do something. That was my first journey with the League of Women Voters. In fact, they came to our rescue, and we won the case, but we did not want to take that house. So that's what it was.
Thank you. All right, I hate those people, of course. Rob.
I don't know if it's a day or an event. I grew up in the 60s, and one of the things that I was able to see is how collective effort could move a whole population in a direction. And I saw the hope that it was bringing for a number of people. And I think you had to say, yes, this is a way to approach things. My concern today is not why am I active. My concern is why aren't everyone active? We have so many problems, so many difficulties. We just need to use whatever talents God gave us to see if we can address those. And so my concern is not why I'm active, it's why aren't everyone else active.
That's a very interesting question. Not everybody is as brave as you are, Kilo.
Okay.
Not everybody. Roy Bell.
I don't know that there's this particular specific incident, but I recall one occasion that I admitted it, I guess. I was one of the founding members of the Southfield Homeowners Coalition back in the early 90s, about 25 years ago or so. And one of the big issues that we formed with the Homeowners Coalition was a coalition of neighborhood associations throughout the city of Southfield. And we had about 50 plus homeowners associations that were active members in that coalition. And that's when I started attending planning commission meetings and attending city council meetings, just sitting in the audience by myself usually, including committee of the whole meetings, and listening, because I had no idea what was going on.
Wow.
And also started attending Parks and Rec board meetings, and every other board and commission in the city I attended numerous times, and just trying to learn how the city works. And then I'd go back and report to the coalition. And the big issue with the coalition at the time was we didn't want Southfield to become paved over. We wanted a tree ordinance, we wanted a wetlands ordinance, so we didn't become just all concrete and asphalt. And which is the reason I started with the planning commission. That's where the land use starts.
Yes.
And anyway, I became the representative for the coalition because nobody else had the time or would take the time to attend these meetings and learn what was going on and what kind of building was going to be coming up. And so I became their representative, and that was very awkward for me at the coalition meeting one night. And I said, "Are you sure you want me to speak on your behalf?" and they said, "Yes, that's what we want you to do."
That's cool. That's cool. Good. So
And
this is how it all began.
It was almost uncomfortable, actually.
Well, that's all right. Well, you know what? It's okay because you must be doing something right. Otherwise, you would not be at this table.
And then at the first council meeting at which I spoke at, really uncomfortable for me. But I started off by saying that I'm an activist. And I said, to me, what that means is that I'm active and that I vote.
Oh, that's perfect.
And that's when I guess I actually publicly admitted I'm an activist.
That's wonderful. Well, my experience, and it'll be quick, but it happened way before it happened to all of you. My twin sister and I were 8 years old, little goody two-shoes, terrified of authority, and we had a classmate in our school who hated us. He was so nasty to us. He called us filthy, dirty little Jews, and he was just not our friend. But one day the teacher walked out of the classroom and said to my sister Eudice, "You will take charge of the classroom while I'm away. Everybody has to behave while I'm away." Well, all blazes. Everything happened at once. Those kids were on the desks. They were going crazy. This kid leaped on one of the desks and said, "Quit it! Let Euni alone. She's in charge." When he said that, the teacher walked back in. Who was in trouble? He was. To the principal's office. Every kid in that class blamed him.
Oh,
Then the two shaky little twins were brought into the principal's office, and we said, "No, that didn't happen. William was trying to help us." And from that moment on, we knew we had to do something when anybody was in trouble. William, however, still continued to hate us, and we didn't care. So being here in Southfield, as with you, and this is so interesting, one thing leads to another. You make the mistake of opening your mouth, people want you on their team. So I'm glad you're on this team. So now, I don't know if you remember this, but I'm a movie buff. And there was a film a long time ago called Rebel Without a Cause. James Dean, that was his second film. Well, he was a brilliant young actor who died before his time. He played the role of a teenager who had squabbling parents and a grandmother that lived with them, and they were constantly at each other. And in one scene, they were arguing so much that he screamed at them, "You are tearing me apart!" And that shocked them, and it stopped. So we come to something, and you and I talked about this a little bit. We've had something wicked this way comes, and we need to address it. We need to let the world know that we're not going to put up with this. We have the most inclusionary, friendly, warm. It's diverse. It goes in many different directions, but I still consider this what I used to call a mixed up city. So it is, of course, this issue of a political shenanigan, whatever you want to call it, of these awful flyers going around the city. So I need some of your input on that. Anybody want to speak up? Talk about how you feel about it?
well, let me just say that when I found out about it, I was shocked. How could someone do this to us? And then there was a second time also, and I still wonder why. And I'm not saying that it was political. I'm not saying that who did it or whatever, but I know that it brought people more together. I remember at the city council meeting when it was that night that it came up, everybody, including all the legislators, all stood and put hands in hand and say, we're not going to let this destroy Southfield.
And by the way, just in case you didn't know, a third one went out.
Oh,
It landed on somebody's lawn yesterday. I got the phone call.
oh,
So I just thought you'd like to know
So-
that they're not stopping
That-
so quick.
yes.
Yeah, and it's really horrible. It speaks badly of the people that are doing it.
mhm.
Do you want to jump in, Roy?
Well, I guess I can start off by saying that I am glad to see that how Southfield, to a person that I have heard of or read about or talked to personally, are appalled at this type of thing happening in Southfield. And that made me just tickled to death. That Southfield, the Southfield that I've grown up in, so to speak, I've only been here 38 years, and so it's been quite a transition. And for at least 25 or 30 years of those 38 years that I've been here, we've been a strong city in welcoming integration.
That's right.
If that's a proper way to put it, but welcoming the massive amount of diversity that we have here. It isn't just black and white. We've got Chaldeans and about 50 other languages are spoken here in
Right.
Southfield.
Right.
And I think that's a good thing. And I cannot understand people for the life of me that don't think that's a good
Well,
thing.
okay, hang on to that, because I saw your mind. I saw it right across that
Written across the
forehead. I'm
forehead.
telling you, and you had a comment to make. Yes,
My
please.
comment is disgusting. The problem I had is that Southfield is still a part of the United States, and the race card is always available to play. And what I do appreciate is we see it as an ugly, disgusting piece of literature designed to divide. I think it's going to affect some folk, but I think overall it served a purpose of saying, look, this is what someone is trying to do. Don't we see it as a disgusting piece of literature, and do we reject it? And to a person, that document has been rejected. I appreciate the city of Southfield for it, but again, the race card is always going to be there to play, and I think it was played in this situation. Not effectively, but played.
No, it's very interesting, and I find it fascinating that a third one went out. It wasn't enough that they sent out two. They had to try again. And I'm very curious, and it's just, I can't imagine, and you're going to have to help me because I've been struggling with this. I cannot imagine anybody stooping to such shenanigans. I love that word. I'm going to use it again. Shenanigans. And thinking that all of us, the black ones, the white ones, the color, whoever we are stupid enough to listen to that kind of stuff. Who are they? Where did they come from? Are they sitting in their little basement somewhere, putting their stuff out just to add some trouble? Are they directed by somebody? Do they think so little of us as a community that they think they can get away with
But
this?
Euni, why not play the race card when you have an opportunity of turning even a few number of voters over? Most elections are pretty close. So if you could move 2, 3, 4% because you can make the race this ugly, why not try it? And I'm being sarcastic.
No,
but
have a good time, please. Have a good time.
So if it's something there, and I am desperate, and I think there's a way to wedge so that I can find a space, then yeah, I would
Okay.
do it if I was so inclined.
Okay, question. Who, pretending we know, pretending we have a crystal ball, I don't have one, but who would be that desperate? What kind of a person would be that desperate to throw that race card in our faces when Southfield has had the reputation, at least for me, since we came here, when our daughter was 9 years old, she's not 9 years old anymore. And I never saw this before. I never saw it in my time here. Now, did it happen before I got here? And it's rearing its ugly head again? Or are there new folks hanging out there or coming in that would like to raise a little ruckus with us? Why, number one, why would they want to do that? Number two, who the heck are they?
And the purpose of it, what is the purpose of it? And so I really think that it's outsiders that don't believe in Southfield, that don't live in Southfield, and maybe that's what their community might do in such instances like that. But I don't know if that was, I can't believe that it was someone in Southfield.
I think you're exactly right.
Is that right?
I believe that's exactly what it is outsiders. And there's no question in my mind, because I have done some checking into it, and that it's politically motivated, but I don't necessarily think it's a candidate. Maybe somebody that a candidate may have hired that were outsiders. And that's the way some people outside the city think politics are supposed to be played.
I agree.
And that's, to me, it is just so despicable that I can't understand why a politician, whether they're running for council or whatever, I say that, I guess, because I ran for council.
So pretending they're running for mayor, pretend.
Yeah, but no matter what a politician is running for, if the people they hire is going to be a reflection on them eventually.
Sure.
And that type of political game playing just should not happen, particularly in a city like this, but actually anywhere, because all it does is continue this belief or anti whatever going on when you play these kind of games. And
well, shouldn't the outside, if this is done on behalf of a candidate, shouldn't that candidate bear full responsibility for whatever that outside group does?
Yes.
You know, you can't say, gee, I wrote a check, someone else then delivered this ugliness, and I had nothing to do with it. You know, and I don't think we know who it is, but what we have is flyers that probably identify every Caucasian that's in a city of any authority.
Yes, it's fascinating.
But I think it should have the reverse effect. We recognize this is a city that is over 70% African American.
Yeah.
And to have a flyer that says, of these 6 people, now we're going to get rid of the 70% African.
What a
counterintuitive would be the wrong word, it's stupid.
It is.
But it still raises the ire of those who can play the race card.
And not only that, I love my journalists. I really do. But this is such meat for the media.
Oh, yes.
It's
yes.
so, they really want to jump. And it's just one of those things because it's a for me, and for, I guess, us here at this table, this is something that we haven't experienced. I know that, I'm going to go backwards. When you were running for mayor that one time, you ran into some pretty difficult stuff.
But it wasn't at this level.
No, it wasn't.
No,
So it did happen somewhat. I mean, I'm not stupid enough to say that it never happened, but to such a level, that's the thing that gets to me. In our town.
But there has been some history, and
You need
prior
to fill me in.
prior to we're going to turn the city over to whites. It was the notion of we can't have the city become another Detroit, and it was how do you play the code word then for people of color. We can't have the city turned over, and it was used specifically in political campaigns to say to keep the integrity of Southfield where it is, and so. I hear you when you say it has never been played to this level, but it has been played.
Okay, so I seem to recall being at a meeting when somebody who was, I think, running for council at the time, I can't remember his name, shame on me, but he stood up and said, we're Southfield, we are little Detroit. And he said it in a very happy manner. And I couldn't understand that. So somebody has to tell me what he was talking about.
I don't know if I can interpret that.
Because it felt to me like it was like we were just an offshoot of Detroit. And I tried to talk to him about it afterward, but he wouldn't. So that has stuck with me. That's been probably 15 years ago, and it stuck with me. So we are our own city.
We are.
We are, and all of this stuff, and we know that this dirty stuff happens in other places. So I guess for it to happen here now, to such an extent, really got me.
But look what it has done.
Yes.
We've got us here at this
Right.
table to talk about, to those who don't know, how the diversity and the way that Southfield has raised many children and legislators and all of that. So sometimes things happen for a reason. And so here we are today talking about it and getting ready to talk about the good things in Southfield.
What good things would those be? I just can't even imagine. No, really. It really hit me hard, and I was incredibly angry because I expected better, and that's why I have you here, because it just seemed to me that we had to sit at this table and bring it out into the open, so that people will really know that this is just totally unacceptable here in our town.
And ever since this series of little episodes started happening, I guess it was what, a month ago or month and a half or so.
Yeah, at least almost 2 months now.
Oh, and
Yes.
I've reflected so many times in the last couple of months. Several years ago, I was very active with the Southfield Mobile Watch program, a group of volunteers that in our own cars we ride around under police supervision. We ride around Southfield with a radio, trying to observe things in the neighborhood that shouldn't be and then report back. And most of the volunteers were African American, but we all come together as a group for the common cause of helping to protect Southfield and volunteering, and the camaraderie was just fabulous.
When was this again?
It was probably in the 90s, and the program lasted for about 15 years, I think.
Okay.
It's fairly recently.
Yes.
No longer there, now back to doing neighborhood watch as
Right.
opposed to mobile watch.
Right.
But I remember a conversation that myself and a couple of African American gentlemen and the white retired police officer that was in charge of the program having the conversation, and we all, to a person, admired this white police officer for what he was doing in heading up the program and keeping it going and recruiting more volunteers and this type of thing. And so we all respected him immensely. And the police officer was telling us about an episode that had taken place in Southfield that involved racial issues. And one of the African American gentlemen that was one of the volunteers, he said, "Well, what are you going to do about it?" Being the police department. And he said, "Because I would rather have a couple of hard-nosed Irish people that goes out there and bust heads before I'll put up with these people coming in here that we don't need in Southfield."
Wow.
And
Wow.
that has stuck with me for 20 years plus
Yes,
now.
that's quite a line.
And
That's quite a line.
so we have so many great people of all races here in Southfield that it's hard for me to believe that something like this could even take hold nominally.
Absolutely. So I have a question for you, because
Yes, ma'am.
your mind works differently from mine, and thank God for that. But what do you think made this happen at this particular time? Were there things going on in the air? Were there vibes going on? Was there stuff
I just
happening
believe
sort of off the radar?
I just believe the race card is always easy to play, and I think it's one that was obvious. It could be played, so it was played. Again, I don't think we're separate from any other place in the United States. I think we're better than most places in the United
That's what I
States,
think,
but I don't think we're separate. And so if you look at the media, the race card is there all the time. Black Lives Matter is the thing that's in front of our faces all the time.
Yes.
We look at, everything racial, and that is just easy to pull.
Okay.
But I go back to how did Southfield get to where it is, excuse me, where it is today.
This is still good cold
Thank
water.
you. Back in the 1970s, when I moved here, I was so interested in that because of the housing
Yes.
that when, let me just think, that when the MISTA, Michigan Southfield,
Oh, yes, yes.
Michigan State
Michigan
Housing
Development Authority.
Try to say that fast.
Yeah, was going to put low-income housing
Yeah.
there where McDonald's was.
I
With
didn't realize.
next to the little apartments that are next to it.
Okay.
Yeah, they were going to put low-income housing, and as it was, because two or three of the council persons at that time supported it, they almost lost.
Wow.
They almost.
I thought one did lose their job,
Maybe one did.
and he later became judge, but one
yes.
did lose his job.
Okay.
Oh, really? No
Okay.
kidding.
Yeah. Oh,
Wow.
yes. And so that sparked the Total Living Commission. It sparked the Home Information Center, and there was a conscious effort at that time to do something to start planning.
Wow.
Okay, when I got on the city council in 1983, we started talking about planning for diversity, because it just doesn't pop up like
No, of
this
course
and all, and you do nothing about it. And I was fortunate enough to go to Shaker Heights, Ohio,
I've got to tell you about that, but you may finish your sentence, of course.
because they had a model that they
Yes, they
talked
did.
about. Now,
Yes, they did.
the when we went there, and that was Sue Goldstein
Yep,
and I,
yep,
my
yep.
husband, went there. We found out that the population was a population less than Southfield,
True.
but the economics were just about the same. And they had a plan that started with their schools, planning for youngsters to come in. Well, we did too,
Yes.
come to find out, because the schools at that time in the early 70s, they had a Jewish holiday, they had a Martin Luther King Day, and they began to plan, I think even before the city so-called plan. But we started to plan for diversity.
Excellent. Well, now I have to tell you.
Okay.
My sister lived, that's where she
She
lived.
lived.
And she was on the commission that made sure that the city would be diverse. And her job, it was so intriguing. Anybody that wanted to buy a home in Shaker, say somebody came from out of town and there was a housing office in Shaker Heights, and you could use them for free.
Okay.
If you were a white person, you had to buy your home in a black neighborhood. If you were a black person, you had to buy your home in that other neighborhood. And if somebody balked at it, the Shaker office would say, you know what, welcome to Shaker Heights. You are so welcome here. Use your own realtor. Because if you use us, you're going to make sure the city is integrated. And that's how it worked out. It was fascinating. And my sister worked on that for years. Absolutely. And every school, by the way, was in a different neighborhood, and they were named after their neighborhood. It's a fascinating city. Yeah, it's a model.
I'm not
It's a
sure
model.
how, if Barbara recognized the impact of her being elected to a public office
Oh,
in
that one-
1983.
that lady
Yes,
over there?
that lady over there.
Oh, my gosh.
It was momentous. It was
It
a thing
was.
that says, you know, not only are we here in this community, but we have members who are respectful enough to be able to take leadership.
No
And so
question.
that was really a momentous occasion. But
Absolutely.
But that was the beginning. One of the things that had happened is that the city continued with kind of a notion of let's keep Southfield to Southfielders and let's keep Detroiters out. It was never the welcoming mat was not rolled out.
Really?
And so what had to happen is there was a fight, a major fight, the community and the city. And fortunately, the community through Bob Locke.
Oh, my goodness,
yes.
yes.
Goes back.
The city of Southfield said, okay, let's adopt this plan. The plan was multifaceted, and in doing so, I think it made for the absence of pain in the integration from that point on. So the plan did a number of things. One, it developed a police cadet program. A police cadet program that went out of its way to find African American candidates. The fortunate thing is our chief of police today was a police cadet.
Right.
We insisted upon the hiring of a person of color, not only in police department but in personnel. We began an affirmative action plan that says this is the way we're going to deal with folk from this point on. And I think by doing this, the city was able to say, okay, there's a transition coming, we can address it. And so we had a major fight. It was in the media, and of course everybody enjoyed. But after that,
Everybody enjoyed.
but after that, we didn't have to have
Give
that
me a
reason to
fight.
fight.
Give me a fight.
And I think after
Yes.
that, the infrastructure was in place, and we were able to get to where we are today. So,
That's astonishing. Did you
yes.
know about this?
No.
This where was I in 1980? I was here.
well, this was Barbara again was that breakthrough.
Yes.
But it was afterwards. It says this can be our community too. So it was in the late '80s, I think, and I was part of the NAACP at the
Yes,
time.
that's
That was when we had that
Yes.
fight,
Wow.
and again, the unfortunate thing about the race card is when people saw it as a racial conflict, everyone got on board. It was in the media. People came. The
I
city
guess it
council.
did,
There were
yes.
people in city council meetings at the door. You couldn't get in. It was like you had
Wow.
to pay for admission.
Oh
And
my
it was the
goodness.
thing. And then once it was resolved, it's like, okay. Everybody
Yeah.
went home.
Why was everybody so upset? This is just fine. Oh my gosh. I guess I was on a personal level. I was on the library board, and I was raising a kid, and I was working, and I wasn't quite into the public realm the way you have been from that very day. It didn't happen to me, but
Yeah.
in infants.
Well, let me ask you this. Did you know the Ku Klux Klan was here in Southfield?
You are giving me a heart attack. When was that?
Oh, what year was that?
We're looking at late '80s. and-
Late 80s on 10 Mile Road
Really?
near
What?
Fox 2. Yeah, Fox 2.
Fox 2 is at 9 Mile.
It would be no, it's 10.
Channel 7 is on 10 Mile.
Okay.
Whichever.
Whichever.
Right.
I like to be
Yes,
accurate
okay,
here.
right. And they stood on one side with their hoods
Oh, you know
on,
what? I do remember that. Mea culpa.
and we
I
stood
do.
on the other side, and we made sure that that's a civic citizen of Southfield.
Yes.
Make sure that the young people could see what was happening. Oh, yes.
What made them come? I mean, was there
We
an
don't know
incident?
what made them
They just
come.
decided one day they were going to get all dressed up and come to Southfield.
But we knew about it. I'm not sure why we
Right.
knew they were, but we had some information, but everybody was alerted. But they were there in full regalia.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Yes, Roy, you were going to say.
To go back to something that Barbara was talking about a while ago about when she got elected to council, you said 83.
83.
One of the amazing things to me about that fact alone is that at the time Southfield was not 50-50.
9%.
9%
9%.
African American. That
9%.
is the story.
9%.
And you.
And which tells me,
Amazing.
at least, that Southfield, at least from 1983 forward, has always been very accepting
Sure.
of the diversity in Southfield.
Sure.
But it had to be influenced because, let me go back to my times with the Women's Conference of Concerns in Detroit, and there was Irma Henderson.
Oh, yes.
Irma Henderson was on city council then.
Right.
She knew people in Southfield, so she helped to mend the way for me.
Sure.
And I know that the city thought that it was time. Some people didn't think it was time, but
Well,
people
too
thought it
bad
was
for
time.
them.
Yes, because I won.
And yes, you did. You won handily. It's fascinating because anybody who knows me knows that I never lived in a neighborhood in my life that didn't have every kind of person in it. So coming to a place where it was that's that 8 Mile divide that has absolutely irritated the heck out of me for 110 years that I live here. And that's a lie. Didn't live for 110 years. But still in all,
108.
that's the one. But the thing is, I could not fathom, I still can't, because I'm working on getting public transit going.
Oh, I
And when
remember
they
that.
stop at that 8 Mile divide, it makes me crazy. And I'm just astounded and appalled, and I'm just ranting right now at that 8 Mile divide thing. And I think that influenced everything, the migration into Southfield, and because people wanted to get away from the rotten stuff.
But it wasn't just 8 Mile just wasn't a dividing line for transportation.
No, it was a dividing line between people, between those people over there in Detroit and all the other people out here, who mostly are the white ones.
Because the recognition is if you were crossed 8 Mile Road at the wrong time, you were policed. You were stopped by police. You could, if you were ever going to be arrested in due time, it was because you crossed 8 Mile Road.
And see, that's what I haven't been able to get past, let's put it that way. I wonder, where did that begin? It had to have started sometime.
Well, it started in Detroit. It started with Coleman Young
Making that statement?
making a statement, hit
Right.
hit 8 Mile Road.
Yeah.
But also
I thought it
people
happened
knew.
before that.
Also, people knew that what happened to bring about policemen, African American policemen. Coleman Young at that time was determined that he was going to change things around because there was all white police
Right,
at that time,
right.
and unfortunately, the African Americans were the instruments that they used to lock people up and everything.
Well,
That organization was called Stress.
Stress.
Oh, I
It was
remember
called
Stress.
Stop the Robberies,
I
Enjoy
remember
Safe
Stress,
Streets.
yes.
And Coleman Young came in with the banner that says, we're going to stop stress.
Right.
Stress is the 1960-70 equation of what's happening to every police department now.
Except ours, thank God.
A number of African Americans were killed in unusual situations, and it was really a dividing point for the community. And so he said, I am going to stop this. I grew up in the city of Detroit. My mother told me that I had to come in by the time the streetlights came on
yes.
because the police might shoot me. Not because of anything that happened in the neighborhood. The neighborhood was extremely coherent, but the police might shoot me, so I had to be in before the streetlights came on. But Barbara, let me talk about one thing. You asked the question, where did this 8 Mile divide start?
I really want to know.
Historically, it's now known as sundown cities. Historically, there were communities in the country that says after the sun went down, a person of color could not be there. And the idea was they would use the N-word, the pejorative N-word. If you are here after the sun comes down, you better keep running. And so they even had towns. There was a Keep Running Mississippi. There were other communities that said, we are going to ensure no matter what happens, people of color will not find safety in this community. We have a number of them in this community. Dearborn is one of those historic cities.
Yes.
All of the east side, Macomb County, was historic. And where you saw it is they were the last cities to integrate after the 60s and 70s because of those policies. Detroit, even within itself, was a sundown city. Detroit, Mayor Cobo was a community organizer as part of his growth pattern. And after became a community organizer, he joined enough communities that says we are going to keep our community safe from them for him to have a public perch. He became city council person. He still used that public perch of we're going to keep the city, at least parts of the city, white and other parts black, and we're going to do that until he became mayor. He continued that, and some of the things that he continued are still obvious, like we have in Detroit 2 expressways that are essentially 2.5 miles apart that are parallel. It makes no sense unless you could see the history of I-75.
And that was the Black Bottom thing, wasn't it?
Well, Black Bottom has an interesting name. I'm just a little bit off
because
topic.
of the earth.
Yes, because the city of Detroit is on a slant,
That's right.
and Black Bottom was the lowest part of the city, and that's where the most fertile soil was.
Right,
So it's called
I
Black Bottom
know that,
as
but
compared
wasn't that the thing with the 2 express?
Yes, it was,
They
because
got
it went
built
down
in the
Hastings
50s.
Street.
That's
Hastings
right.
Street was the center of
Yes.
black community.
Right.
And so what you'll see is an expressway that went due north on Hastings, and then goes right to go through the black population in Hamtramck before it then goes out into Macomb County. And so he was a person who ensured that expressway would go in a direction.
Calculated.
But it was the notion of a sundown city, keeping it, I want to put the word safe, keeping people of color from those cities so that they can ensure the safety of their population.
Wow.
So Oakland County was no different in that sense. You crossed the line, except for Rollo Township, you crossed the line, and at that point you were overly policed. And the policing was one again, well, I won't go too far in that.
No, it's okay, whatever works.
But the policing is one that has, in some communities, never stopped. Again, let me go back to my NAACP days. In the city of Livonia, which was recently probably the least diverse city, until maybe 5 or 6 years ago, least diverse city in community. It bordered on the city of Detroit at a street called Schoolcraft. And so it was not unusual for a police officer to be parked at Telegraph and Schoolcraft. Livonia starts further west than that, but it would not be unusual. So a police officer would just be there. And what they would see is if they saw a driver driving down the street, they would broadcast, there is a bill. And bill for Livonia meant black in Livonia. There's a bill traveling west on the street. And if that person did not cross another point within a mile, the police officer that was a mile back would then start driving through the neighborhoods to ensure that the bill would be stopped and at least questioned. In Troy, they had another expression. The one they used in Troy was NIT. I won't tell you what the N stood for, but it was in Troy. And they would use the same kind of techniques. But it was effective in keeping cities kind of pure, and I use that in the worst possible way, of black people. Now, let me add one more thing. This was supported by the county. The county, with its county executive and then prosecutor, wanted to ensure that transportation would not be, that we won't have a busing system that brought Detroiters into their community where they could cause problems. And since then, we have had kind of destruction of communities because there's an absence of transportation.
Absolutely. That's what I'm going through right now, and I've been doing it for the last 5-6 years, and it all comes together. It's just horrendous.
But I can also remember in Detroit, because I was born in Detroit, and grew up in Detroit, and when we bought our first house on Underwood, beautiful, beautiful area. The first thing that
Would you just tell me where it is?
Grand River and Joy Road.
Oh, okay.
Grand River and Joy Road. There was a Riviera Theater. Riviera Theater. Well, when we moved in, we found that the people didn't want us because we were the first African Americans on the street, and there was a petition to get us off of the street, and the people that we lived next to didn't even want, it was a double driveway, they didn't even want their car next to ours and put up bricks. But
how inventive.
but can you imagine how that would make someone feel?
Awful,
and then to make it come out better.
We're going to make this quick because we're about running out of time.
Oh,
Can you
really?
imagine such a
well, we
thing?
haven't talked about Southfield being diverse enough.
We are, and by the way, these are good stories. We are going to, oh no, we're going to have to do this again sometime. I'm going to have you at this table. But what a joy to have you. And but see, you shine. We all shine because we are the lights of this city.
That's right.
And we're going to fight like blazes to make sure that our city stays what it has been, and we have all kinds of exciting things in the future. And let's hope that we can get together again.
I look forward to it.
Me too. How about it, Roy?
Absolutely.
This was
Barbara
great.
darling, beautiful.
great.
And Southfield, thank you for watching. And by the way, we need some feedback. So if you want to call the station and tell them how marvelous we are, we would absolutely love that. And in the meantime, keep on talking, Southfield. Thank you so much.